Hello there and thanks for watching. Today we're going to watch a video that supposedly ranks all atheist arguments and attempts to show why they supposedly are bad arguments. This ranking is done by Derek McAllister, a Christian professor who has a PhD in philosophy, so you'd think that people like him are about the best that Christian apologetics has got to offer. Let's see what that means. The arguments of one of the top Christian thinkers. Yeah.
As an academic philosopher, I'm ranking the best and worst arguments for atheism, and they're not all bad arguments.
Okay, that's not a real good start. Why do you already have to flaunt your academic degree in the first sentence of your video when presenting arguments? The fact that you've got an academic degree is pretty much irrelevant. You can have a PhD and still talk complete nonsense, as some of your fellow Christian apologists have demonstrated over and over again. And you say you're going to rank all arguments for atheism? What does that even mean? Atheism doesn't really need any arguments, other than the failure of theistic arguments. As long as the arguments for the existence of your God are either very poor or in some cases even total nonsense, nobody needs an argument not to believe in your God. Just like you don't need any arguments not to believe in vampires, fairies or wizards, as long as nobody proves that they exist. I'm kind of afraid that you're going to present your audience a bunch of fake atheistic arguments to then attack these arguments that atheists don't really make. But I shouldn't get ahead of myself too much, so let's listen to what you've got to say.
Some people think this is the strongest argument for atheism. We should only believe things on evidence, and since there's no evidence for God, well, we shouldn't believe in him.
Yes, the lack of evidence for the existence of your God. That is the most important reason why atheists are atheists. And it's an extremely strong reason, because you can't prove that your God exists. No Christian has been able to prove the existence of their God for the past 2,000 years. And there is no good reason to believe that this is ever going to change. So yes, the lack of evidence for the existence of your God.
I think this is not a very good argument because it relies upon logical positivism. If I can demonstrate it, therefore it exists. And it doesn't exist unless it can be demonstrated to exist. And this makes a big mistake about God just being a physical object within the universe, something we can go out and observe, whereas God, classically understood, is the ground of all existence. The classical philosophical proofs like contingency and motion are the evidence. I would give this a C tier that's respectable, and I'm certainly sympathetic to it. Like, I look out into the world, there is no God, but I think it's philosophically nearsighted.
Wow. It's pretty astonishing how you managed to say so many silly things about this matter in only 30 seconds. We've got to split this up in a few parts and then take them on one by one.
I think this is not a very good argument because it relies upon logical positivism. If I can demonstrate it, therefore it exists. And it doesn't exist unless it can be demonstrated to exist.
No, the atheistic argument that we're discussing here does not rely on logical positivism. And no, what you describe is not logical positivism. And since you have a PhD in philosophy, I'm kind of surprised that you seem to be giving a wrong definition of logical positivism. Logical positivism does not state that things don't exist unless they can be demonstrated to exist. Logical positivism states that truth claims are only meaningful if they can be verified empirically, or if they are logically or mathematically true. That is something entirely different, and it doesn't affect atheism. It affects claims that cannot be verified empirically, like the claim that an invisible and immaterial God exists. General atheism is just not believing your claim that a God exists. We general atheists, which is the most common form of atheism, we do not make any God claim. We do not claim that a God does not exist. So logical positivism does not influence the position of general atheists whatsoever. Contrary to your position, you claim that an invisible and immaterial God exists, and that claim is not empirically verifiable. No one can check if it is true or not, so there is no good reason to believe such a thing in the first place. And that is where logical positivism kicks in. It says that your God claim has little meaning because it cannot be verified to be true, which seems like a rather reasonable thought.
And this makes a big mistake about God just being a physical object within the universe, something we can go out and observe.
No, we didn't make any mistake. We do not assume that your God is a physical being that we can observe. Our position is that whatever you think your God supposedly is, you have not provided evidence that proves his existence. Therefore, we do not believe your God claim.
Whereas God, classically understood, is the ground of all existence.
How your God is classically understood is Christian apologist language for how Christians imagine their supposed God to be. Since there is no evidence that proves the existence of your God, Christians can only imagine the properties of their God, contrary to characters that are proven to exist, like Winston Churchill. His actions and words can be understood because we know he existed. As for the Christian God, since he's not proven to exist, his words and actions cannot really be understood, but rather imagined or assumed. And what does that even mean? The ground of all existence. How do we verify or even define that?
Classical philosophical proofs like contingency and motion are the evidence.
Classical proofs like contingency and motion? Oh, come on now. A real classical proof would be Pythagoras' theorem, proving that a squared plus b squared is c squared. That is a classical proof, because it's still valid after 2,500 years, and it actually proves something. The arguments from contingency and motion are not classical proofs. They are pretty bad arguments that don't prove anything whatsoever.
I would give this a C tier that's respectable, and I'm certainly sympathetic to it. Like, I look out into the world, there is no God, but I think it's philosophically nearsighted.
Ranking this at C is pretty laughable. All you did was misrepresenting the reason why most atheists are atheists. You just repeated your God claim and you mentioned two pretty bad theistic arguments. If you want to give this argument anything other than an A ranking, then prove that your God exists. It's that simple. And if even a philosophy PhD can't prove that your God exists, then it demonstrates that atheists have very good reasons to not believe the God claim.
The second one here is evolution. We don't need a creator because evolution explains how humans got here. I'm really not sure about this one. I just don't see the pool on this, especially considering that I can be a theist and believe in evolution. With theistic evolution, they seem entirely mutually consistent. So I just don't see the thrust of this. I don't see how this could be an argument against, not just against God's existence, but for atheism. So I'm going to put this squarely in the F tier.
I think this is where your credibility starts taking a significant hit. You're now pretending as if atheists somehow see evolution as an argument for atheism, which is completely wrong, and you must know that. In fact, the opposite of what you suggest is true. Atheists usually don't see evolution as an atheistic argument at all, because evolution is an entirely different topic that has got nothing to do with atheism. The reality is that here on YouTube, there are many Christian apologists who somehow do not acknowledge the facts of evolution. They try to disprove evolution by making all kinds of mistakes and using all kinds of misrepresentations. They even think they succeed in disproving evolution, and then act as if they checkmated atheists. And then we, atheists, have to tell them over and over again that whatever deluded ideas they have about evolution, it has got nothing to do with atheism. So what these people basically do is they kind of try to strawman us by acting as if evolution is part of atheism. Then they supposedly disprove evolution, so checkmate, atheists. It's a pretty embarrassing procedure, and you just must know that this happens all the time. Yet you now seem to double down on this strawman argument fallacy by suggesting that atheists use evolution as an argument for atheism. No, we don't. So including it in your ranking is nonsense.
Not all of these are bad, but this one's simply a lack of belief. This is what people on the internet have called shoe atheism. A shoe can hold this philosophical view of, well, it lacks belief in God. I understand this from a certain perspective, but this more accurately describes agnosticism, not atheism. So I'm going to put that in the F tier. To call yourself an atheist and say that you simply lack belief in God, this is just a category error.
Again, this is just 25 seconds of your footage, and you go wrong on so many levels that I have to split it up in sections. There we go.
Not all of these are bad, but this one's simply a lack of belief.
Lack of belief is not an argument, it's a position. I think I've never heard any atheists use lack of belief as an argument in any debate. It's just a position that most of us general atheists take. And all it means is that general atheists do not take a belief position on gods. So we don't take the belief position that a God exists. And we don't take the belief position that a God does not exist. In my case, the reason for that is that the supposed evidence for gods is very poor, and gods are usually defined in a way that they cannot be objectively and independently verified. So there is hardly any good reason to believe that they exist, and there is no way to independently and objectively verify if gods exist. Compare this to rolling a die in a very dark room, and you can't see the outcome. So what do you believe? Do you believe that the die rolled an even number? There is no way for you to verify that, so you don't take that belief position. Do you believe that a die rolled an odd number? No, you don't, because there is no way for you to verify that either. So you don't take a belief position on this. General atheists do exactly the same thing regarding gods. Again, that's just a position of the general atheist, and atheists do not present this as an argument for anything. So again, you're trying to strawman atheists into arguments they never make.
This is what people on the internet have called shoe atheism. A shoe can hold this philosophical view of, well, it lacks belief in God.
No, this is not what people on the internet call shoe atheism. This is what you, Christian apologists, say in order to make the atheistic position look bad when you run out of real arguments, which usually is pretty quickly. Maybe that is why you are already referring to shoe atheism within the first 90 seconds of your video. And it's a totally silly rebuttal, of course. A lack of belief is the logical outcome of an honest thought process in which the available options are considered. A shoe cannot do that. Calling a lack of belief shoe atheism is analogous to saying that vegetarians and bachelors are like shoes because, shoes don't eat meat, and shoes are not married either. This is really beyond stupid, and it doesn't deserve any attention in a serious video.
I understand this from a certain perspective, but this more accurately describes agnosticism, not atheism. So I'm going to put that in the F tier. To call yourself an atheist and say that you simply lack belief in God, this is just a category error.
No, man. That's not a category error. And this is where your PhD starts to work against you. Because if you present yourself as an academic philosopher, you should at least understand the nuances in the meanings of words like atheism and agnosticism. So there we go again. The simple procedure here would be just to follow the strict etymological path, which is the English word theism is based upon the ancient Greek word of theos. Theos meaning God or gods, and the English word theism therefore means believing in gods. Atheism just is not theism or without theism. That is what the A in atheism stands for. So if you're not a theist, you're an atheist. And agnosticism is originated in the ancient Greek word of gnosis, which means knowledge or knowing. So then the English word agnosticism means not knowing or without knowing. So very clearly, atheism and theism are belief positions, where Gnosticism and agnosticism are knowledge positions. So I am, for example, an agnostic atheist because I don't believe your claim that a God exists, but I also don't know for sure if a God exists or not, because you theists keep defining your gods as invisible, undetectable beings. So how can anyone know anything about them? Now, there are many reputable sources that give their own specific definitions of atheism. This is from the Merriam-Webster dictionary. Lack of belief or a strong disbelief in the existence of a god or any gods. This is from the Oxford Dictionary. Disbelief or lack of belief in the existence of God or gods. This is from the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy. The psychological state of lacking the belief that God exists. And this is from the Wikipedia page on atheism, basing their definition on 4 sources. Atheism, in the broadest sense, is an absence of belief in the existence of deities. So some of these sources clearly choose for the lack of belief definition, while other sources sometimes define atheism as so-called hard atheism, which is believing that a God does not exist. But here is the problem with that last type of definition of atheism. Most people who identify as atheists, they are the lack of belief atheists. They just don't believe your God claim. Second, there is this. If you believe that a God does not exist, then you also don't believe the claim that a God does exist. But it's not the other way around. Hard atheism is a subset of general atheism, just like Catholicism is a subset of Christianity. The only thing all Christians have in common is their belief in Jesus Christ. Now, the only thing all atheists have in common is that they lack belief in gods. So the etymological meaning of the word atheism, the general use of the word atheism, the many definitions of atheism from reputable sources, the logic about what all atheists have in common, and the actual belief position of most people who call themselves atheists are all pointing to the same thing. Lacking belief in gods is the only proper definition that applies to all atheists. It's not that complicated. And confusing that with agnosticism, not being able to see this nuance, is only forgivable for those who do not flaunt their academic degree in the first sentence of their video.
The next one here is the I believe in just one less God than you. It's very popular. You hear people like Richard Dawkins use this. I think Christopher Hitchens has used this. Christians already reject Thor and Zeus and Odin and all these other gods. So, the atheist just goes one God further and rejects the Christian God as well. I just believe in one less God than you do. Again, this is a misunderstanding of what God is.
No, this is not a misunderstanding of what your God is, because you haven't proven your God to be real. Just like Thor, Zeus, and Odin are not proven to be real. They are all in the same lineup of unproven characters. So the one less God argument is not a misunderstanding of what your God is. At best, it is a misunderstanding of what you imagine your God to be. And it's not even that.
Those gods of old mythology and pantheons, they are created beings. They're not eternal. They're certainly not what the classical God is said to be, the ipsum esse subsistens, or existence itself. You're comparing comic book characters to the author of everything in reality.
But you didn't prove that Thor, Odin, and Zeus are comic book characters and that your own God is not. To non-Christians in the 21st century, all of them, including your own God, are comic book characters. And it's up to you, Christian apologists, to finally demonstrate that your God exists. But you don't. Your only rebuttal is repeating your God claim. My God is real, and other gods are comic book characters. That doesn't add anything to anything.
And by the way, I get this, right? So I'm going to put this in the D tier, though, because although I do believe it's a very bad argument, I will qualify that by saying this. I think that if it's a matter of parsimony, right? I also think that it just gets parsimony wrong. So this just misunderstands parsimony. It makes for a great bumper sticker, but it's just bad philosophy.
No, the one less God argument has got nothing to do with parsimony. We're not looking for the simplest solution here. The one less God argument is meant to show how arbitrary the belief in a specific God is. I've made a detailed video about that. Link is in the description below the video. You theists all have your own storybooks and your own miracles, etc. And you all reject each other's storybooks and miracles for similar reasons. You all claim that your storybook is the one and only that shows the one and only truth, while none of you can prove the existence of your specific God. So the atheist just does the intellectual honest thing and doesn't believe in any God.
The next bad argument is going to be a very familiar one. It's the omnipotence paradox, that can God create a stone so big that he can't lift it? This is a puzzle. It's not a problem.
Yeah, so I know hardly any atheist who uses this as an argument for atheism. I sometimes see atheists use this to correct theists who claim that their God is all-powerful and can do anything. And then sometimes atheists say, well, are you sure about that? Because can your God do things that are logically impossible? And then sometimes the example of the rock pops up. I've seen Matt Delahanty do it. But this is basically never used as an argument for atheism. It's mostly used to correct theists. So again, why include this in your ranking other than to pretend that atheistic arguments are bad? Again, the whole point being that atheism doesn't really need arguments as long as you don't prove the existence of your God. First come up with some really decent, solid evidence for the existence of your God, and then we atheists can see if we need arguments to counter your proposition. We atheists are basically sitting back now for 2,000 years, awaiting some meaningful breakthrough in your God claims.
Ever since Thomas Aquinas and even before, omnipotence has been defined as anything that God can do which is logically coherent.
Well, okay, then perhaps put a bit more effort in your internal Christian education system, because it's often us atheists who need to explain this to your fellow internet Christians.
So we're going to place this one, since it's a very fun puzzle, but it just doesn't have any philosophical push to it. We're going to place that in the F tier as well.
And again, this is you coming up with some bad argument, pretending that atheists use it as an argument for atheism, and then you put it in the F tier so that you can make a video that shows that atheistic arguments are bad. By now, your video has become one big strawman fist. I would have been able to give your method a bit more of a mild judgment if you had presented yourself as Milkman Derek or Janitor Derek. But you flaunted your academic degree from the very first moment. So not good, pretty disappointing. What else do you got?
The next bad argument is that there are too many contradictions in the Bible. How many angels were at the tomb? How many women discovered the empty tomb? Those sort of things. Now, I honestly don't understand how this would be an argument against God's existence, right?
Well, finally, we've got a very interesting point here, but not for the reasons that you think. You're saying that contradictions in the Bible are not a good argument against the existence of your God. Wow. What follows is that consistencies in your Bible book are not good arguments for the existence of your God. Do you realize the consequences of what you're saying here? If even inconsistencies do not prove a story to be wrong, then the story also loses its value to prove what is right. You're basically disqualifying the Bible as your source for truth-finding. You can't pick and choose and only apply this to the inconsistencies, but it also applies to the consistencies and, in fact, to the entire content of the Bible. Well done.
To say that a supreme creator of the universe doesn't exist simply because these things in this book are misunderstood or they seem to conflict or...
Well, to say that a supreme creator of the universe does exist just because the Bible says this and this. You're digging yourself deeper and deeper into this hole. Wow, amazing how many theistic arguments have the tendency to bite themselves in the behind. And you just put it on a silver plate for me. I didn't have to come up with that myself. Much appreciated.
So what? Suppose there are contradictions. I don't think that there are. I have a video on that. But suppose there are. Does that mean that there is not a God? I just don't see how this is a good argument. I'm going to put it in the F tier as well.
Yeah, suppose that there are contradictions in the Bible book. Who cares? Never mind what the Bible book says, it doesn't prove anything. Totally agree with you there. I love this.
So the next one is a little bit stronger. It doesn't go in the F tier like all these other obviously bad ones. Religion is to blame for atrocities. Like, I sympathize with this one, as anybody should, right? The witch hunts, the Inquisition, the Crusades, right? These are all really terrible things. And apparently this objection goes that religion poisons all things, and so, well, God can't exist somehow.
Yes, it is true that religion, and especially Christianity, has caused unimaginable suffering throughout history. But we atheists do not use that as an argument for atheism. Some of us use it as an argument to show how problematic religion can be. So again, you misrepresent us. Let's leave it at that and move on to the next misrepresentation.
This next one, science explains X without a creator. Our scientific knowledge is always constantly developing, and, well, if people are proposing the sort of God of the Gaps explanation, well, we know how lightning works. We know that it wasn't Thor or any of these other strange gods that built these things and do these things in the universe. So, as our scientific understanding increases, then our God hypothesis is obsolete. But this is just another category error. Science can't really explain why there's order in the universe to begin with. It can't explain why there's science itself, why the laws work. It can't explain laws of logic, can't explain laws of mathematics, so on and so forth. So
again, the one making the category error here is you, because you presume that your religion can explain all these questions, while your religion obviously explains nothing. It only presents all kinds of assumptions about these questions, like the origin of the universe is your God speaking planets into existence, which is at the same level of explaining things as saying that thunder and lightning are caused by the hammer of Thor. So no, there are indeed things that science cannot or cannot yet explain. But your religion explains nothing. It only imagines things, unless you got evidence to back up the existence of your planet-speaking being.
The next one is that all religions can't be true. The idea that, well, we know that all these other religions are false. They are all made up, so your religion's all made up too.
No, that's not what atheists say. We don't say all the other religions are false. That is what you say. We say they can't be all true at the same time, which is simply true. But they can all be wrong. And since religions come and go throughout history, Christianity didn't even exist a bit more than 2,000 years ago, religions are very situational. People mostly believe what their parents, teachers and preachers told them. Most religions have the same kind of constructs and concepts, and they all reject each other for similar reasons, while in many aspects they are roughly the same. It makes it rather arbitrary to believe in a specific God. So that's a pretty strong argument. All of them can't be right at the same time.
This next one is pretty formidable. It's a religion is just man-made cope.
Yeah, I really like that, and I'm not going to wait and find out how you will misrepresent us regarding this argument. Let's just move on to the next. At least this time you got the arguments right.
So this next one is who created God. You can go about this a couple of different ways. So the first one, the most classical one, is responding to the cosmological argument. And, if somebody says the infinite regresses are not possible and there has to be an uncreated creator, an unmoved mover, uncaused cause, then that thing must be God. Then the sort of pat answer here, the pat response would just be, well, who created God? Who created that thing? And so as that sort of design, that sort of argument, I just think it's a bad argument. So it just misunderstands what an infinite regress is, how God is supposed to stop that thing. And most theists, if you said that there is a thing that creates the universe and then a thing beyond that thing that creates that thing created the thing that we're calling, theists would just say, okay, well, let's back it up. That ultimate thing is the thing we're calling God. Forget about this thing that created some demiurge or whatever. The ultimate thing, the thing that must be necessary, the ultimate thing for all existence, that created all existence, accounts for all existence, that's going to be the thing that is God.
It's amazing that people who call themselves academic philosophers think that they can get away with mumbo-jumbo like this. So what you're basically saying is the question who created your God is a bad question, because then your answer would be, well, the God who created these other gods, the God that truly was the first one, that is my God. And you think you made some kind of point here. You don't. All you did was go into a comment section saying, first, I was first, so I'm right. And of course, this whole idea of a first unmoved mover defeats itself, because that concept is originated in the idea that an infinite regress is not possible, so there needs to be a first mover. So then you just assign a superpower to your unproven God. He is the first mover, but that doesn't make any sense, because this first mover then becomes his own infinite regress, because when did your God come into existence? Oh, he didn't. He has always been there, so his existence goes back for eternity. But your whole point was that infinite regress is not possible. That is why you needed to invent a first mover. And to patch that problem, you assign yet another superpower to your God. He is outside of time. Well, what does that even mean? It doesn't mean anything. But anyone who dares to expose this as nonsense doesn't understand your God. That's not philosophy, that's the plot of Inspector Gadget. Every time your God runs into a new difficult situation, you just insert a new imaginary superpower so that your God can escape to the next difficult situation. And all the time you prove or even explain nothing whatsoever.
Ones that we're left with here are some pretty formidable ones. I saved the best for last. Miracles aren't possible. Really, the objection here should be that miracles are highly improbable, because this.
No, we atheists don't say that miracles aren't possible. We have no need to make any such claim. You Christians claim that supernatural miracles exist. Yet none of you has ever proven anything supernatural to be real. So we atheists do not have to phrase any argument about supposed miracles. All we have to do is sit back and wait until you guys finally prove that one of your miracles is actually something supernatural.
And the problem with this is it's a bit circular, and Hume's making some really substantial assumptions here. He assumes that the universe is a closed material system, and that is not what theists hold to, right? And if God exists, then miracles are certainly possible.
That is unintentionally funny, because you now accuse atheists of using a circular argument, while you yourself use a circular argument by proposing that this atheistic argument is bad, because if your God exists, this atheistic argument is bad. Academic philosopher, come on, man.
And here's the thing, like, don't get kind of caught up and forget the dialectic. The dialectic here is God exists, and if you say miracles are impossible, well, that assumes that God exists in order to say that.
This has now officially become a clown show. When atheists dare to ask questions about supposed miracles, then we assume the existence of a God because we use the word miracles. What a bunch of nonsense. I recommend Dr. Derek to no longer ask questions about Stonehenge, because then he would assume the existence of Merlin the Wizard. And stop using the word garlic, for fuck's sake, because you assume the existence of vampires.
The next one here is that God can command atrocities. And the evidence for this is that in the Bible, God does this. He commands the slaughter of the Canaanites and so on and so forth, and just really terrible things. And it makes God out to be a moral monster.
Yeah, totally true. Your God is the most evil monster in the history of the world, or rather in the history of stories. Fully agreed. Top tier argument, not so much against the existence of your God, but against worshipping him.
If you understand what the Euthyphro dilemma is and the classical theist answer to that, this completely dissolves. God's not going to be able to command atrocities because goodness and God are one. They are just unified. The classical theist answer to the Euthyphro dilemma is just to split the horns of that dilemma.
Yeah, that's total nonsense. The answer of these theists to the Euthyphro dilemma basically is, no matter what my God does, it's right. Their God voluntarily choosing to drown 1 million babies and children in a planned and systematic manner. It's all good, because my God did it. Not only is this totally stupid, but pretty disgusting in my opinion. Dr. Derek calls this the classical theist answer. Drowning babies and children is just fine. A true classic of Christian philosophy.
The next one, penultimate one here, divine hiddenness, right? This is a big one. I've made a couple of videos on this. Now, if God is perfectly loving and wants a relationship with us, then why does he stay hidden? I'm going to place it squarely in that B tier. It's hard to answer, so it's formidable. It goes in that B tier.
No, it's not hard to answer at all. I've got a perfect explanation for your God not showing himself. How about he doesn't exist? This is indeed a very strong atheistic argument, but not because it's so hard to answer. It's such a strong argument because it's so easy to solve.
Now, our last one, the problem of evil, it is formidable. This is not a Reddit atheist throwaway argument. First of all, it must be distinguished between the logical problem of evil, which I think has been solved, and I made a video about that. I made a few videos on this.
Yeah, me as well. I also made a bunch of videos about the problem of evil, and what do you know? I also solved the problem of evil. The most obvious explanation for the existence of evil is that your God does not exist. It instantly solves divine hiddenness, the problem of evil, and any other inexplicable behavior of your God that Christians have been struggling with for centuries.
That one is extremely potent, extremely powerful. It's really hard to answer, not just from a pre-theoretical point of view, like we said with divine hiddenness. It's hard to answer from a philosophical point of view as well.
No. Again, the explanation is very simple. Your God not existing solves everything in a matter of seconds. You Christian apologists always pretend that this is such a difficult problem, while the answer is staring you right in the face every time you meet an atheist. Hello, your God not existing. It totally solves the problem of evil.
And in order to answer this and divine hiddenness, you have to buy into this sort of worldview, Christian worldview, where this stuff just makes sense, right? Suffering makes sense.
No, to answer the problem of evil, you totally don't have to buy into this warped Christian idea that suffering makes sense. All you have to do is accept the possibility that your God doesn't exist. It's really very easy. We atheists do it every day. What does make more sense to you? That an invisible wizard exists who speaks planets into existence and who loves us so much that he chose to create a world in which World War II would take place? Or that such a wizard maybe doesn't exist? Is that really such a hard question?
Now, the reason why I didn't put anything in the S tier, because I don't think that there are any elite arguments for God's existence. I think that...
Let's listen to that again. That's really Freudian.
Now, The reason why I didn't put anything in the S tier, because I don't think that there are any elite arguments for God's existence. I think that...
You were unintentionally right there. There really are no good arguments to believe in the existence of your God. None of your arguments proves anything about your supposed God, and basically the evidence for the existence of your God is comparable to the evidence for Dracula. You know, there are these scriptures about Dracula. They contain eyewitness accounts of people who have met Dracula. There are inexplicable miracles like mysterious bleedings. There is the existence of bats. There is blood banks all over the world as a cover-up for feeding vampires. There is personal experiences of people who met vampires or who are vampires. There is direct revelation from Dracula to people. There is faith in vampires all over the world. Dracula has risen from the dead. Only real vampires can do that. Dracula is proven to be a historical figure, etc. So basically, the same types of evidence that you present for your Jesus.
Now, so I know this is going to generate tons of disagreement and discussion. I want to know how you think I got this ranking wrong, how you would have ranked them.
Well, I think I've properly explained in much detail what I think is wrong with your ranking. It's not the ranking itself, but rather the way you misrepresent atheistic arguments. You simply make up a whole bunch of bad arguments that most atheists don't really use, and then you smack an F tier on those arguments, pretending that atheists have bad arguments, while the reality is that we atheists don't need many arguments at all, because the arguments for the existence of your God fail so exotically hard. We atheists already have debunked all of them, and all we have to do is wait for something new to happen. And in the meanwhile, sometimes, if we feel like it, we make videos like mine, in which we expose how bad theistic arguments are, even when they are proposed by people who present themselves as academic philosophers. So, that's it for today. Thanks for watching.